Well, I've erred badly. I didn't find a place, I didn't think about a place. That's what I really want. Hey, good evening, everybody. Christopher Larson, Director of Production, says we're live and ready to go. Thank you, Christopher. Hey, I see we have some scouts tonight. Troops, if I understand, 107, 1070, and 152 are here to observe their local government at work. We'll try to behave and do well for you, Scouts. Great. Good to have you here. What we do at this point, and Scouts, if you would help us, we will rise and honor America with the Pledge of Allegiance. And then before we open, Micah Beckwith is here to give us an invocation. Scouts, would you please lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Pastor?
Let's pray. Father, thank you for being the God of liberty. Lord, we know that liberty is your idea. It's not man's idea. And Lord, I thank you for what we have here in Westfield. I thank you for the freedom that we have. And thank you for the servants that are boldly serving and leading our community, God, to follow your right ways. Lord, would you give them wisdom? Would you give them discernment? And would you give them peace, God, as they lay forward where we are to go in our community, God? Continue to pour your spirit out and your blessings out over this city. And we pray that for our entire state and our nation and this world, God. We love you. We give this time to you. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
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 Micah, thank you so much. Mr. Johns, if you would so choose to run tonight's meeting.
Thank you, Mayor Cook. First item tonight, Kim Strain, would you please note the presence of a quorum?
Joe Edwards,
Here.
Scott Willis,
Here.
Mike Johns,
Here.
Jake Gilbert,
Here.
Scott Fry,
Here.
Troy Patton.
Here.
We do have a quorum.
Okay, first item on the agenda is to announce any changes to the agenda. We've had a request to move one of our presentations ahead of the other. So we will move the presentation on the RDC's 2023 budget ahead of the year-end report from the RDC. That is the only change that we have to our agenda this evening. The other way around then. You're right. We'll move the presentation of the 2023 behind the presentation of the fourth quarter. Okay. First item then on the agenda tonight is the approval of the minutes of our January 23rd meeting. Councilors, do you have any questions regarding the minutes? Any changes, additions, deletions? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the minutes of our December 23rd meeting or January 23rd meeting?
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
Motion made by Councilor Willis, seconded by Councilor Edwards. Kim, would you call the roll?
Troy Patton,
Yes.
Joe Edwards,
Yes.
Mike Johns,
Yes.
Scott Fry,
Yes.
Scott Willis,
Yes.
Jake Gilbert.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the approval of our claims docket for today, February 13th, 2023. Councilors, do you have any questions or comments regarding the claims docket? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the claims docket for February 13th, 2023?
So moved.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Motion made by Councilor Willis, seconded by Councilor Gilbert. Kim, would you call the roll, please?
Joe Edwards,
Yes.
Scott Willis,
Yes.
Jake Gilbert,
Yes.
Mike Johns,
Yes.
Scott Fry,
Yes.
Troy Patton.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Moving then into our main body this evening of our agenda's miscellaneous business and special recognition. We've got 4 presentations this evening. First one is from the Oversight Committee. It's a committee meeting review, I guess, by Jake Gilbert, who's going to review that, and with Marla Ehler.
Okay, thank you. So this is going to be 5 to 10 minutes of something that has taken hours upon hours upon hours behind the scenes. So first, I just wanted to say that and address all the people that chipped in and helped and say thank you. So Marla's probably spearheaded this project the most. We'll hear from her in a second, but she's been exhaustive in this. Kevin, I saw earlier, thank you, Kevin, for all, oh, there you are, my bad. Thank you, Kevin. Mayor Cook has been very helpful with this as well. And then legal and Jeremy, even you, thank you, sir. So everyone who's chipped in on all of this, just really appreciate all the time. For the public, just trying to make sure that we do things the right way, and that we did a review of our boards and commissions to ensure that policies, systems are being followed and in place, making sure terms are up to date, making sure that records are being kept, making sure we are in alignment with code and various things like that. When you go from a town to a city, and then there are other things that I learned about, like joinder agreements. Sometimes it's not as clear as it seems. And so with various code and overlapping legislation, appreciate all the hard work and legal and everything here. So this was a big task, and just grateful again. So what boards and commissions are we even talking about? So the Advisory Planning Commission, the American Rescue Plan Committee, the Board of Public Works, the Board of Zoning Appeals, the Civilian Fire Merit Board, the Redevelopment Commission, the Redevelopment Authority, the Economic Development Commission, Westfield Economic Foundation, the Plat Committee, the Liquor License Review Committee, the Preservation Committee, the Community Development Corporation, Westfield Building Corporation, the RFP Committee, the Facade Improvement Grant Program Committee, the Riverfront License Review Committee, the New Builder Architecture Review Committee, and the Impact Fee Review Board. So a lot more than I thought we had. So again, thank you for all the hard work. Marla has all this handy for us now. The Clerk Treasurer's Office will be keeping a lot of these records. We're going to be in great shape going forward. Everything should be good there. We're going to address some of these specifically, but one thing that we have talked about in our city, people move here and they want to get involved and are looking for opportunities. I know Kayla is putting together a volunteer portal with Westfield Welcome. That's a great opportunity for our city. And then in terms of a little more of a leadership position, many people want to get involved in leadership, and a great place to start is on a board or commission. So Marla, would you mind speaking about the special project that you and Michael have put together here?
Thanks, Councilor Gilbert. I'm very excited to share with the community and with all of you that if we go to our city website at this point, there's now a new icon. You go to the residents page, just click on residents, and when you scroll down, there's going to be an icon with a sign-up sheet, and it has all the boards and commissions there for you. A resident can choose up to 3 boards or commissions that they have interest in, and they leave their name, contact information, and it's all electronic and all automated, and it's going to be emailed directly to the Clerk Treasurer's office where we can keep it in a file, and then we can share that. The city has an all-share file where we can share files with one another, and so when the mayor, whoever that might be, or council needs to make that decision, you'll be able to just say, hey, can you keep me up to date? Councilor Gilbert had suggested maybe that I send out quarterly kind of all the different applications for you if that's where you want to go. I think that's a great idea. And so I'm super excited that it's there, and it's been launched with big help from Michael Sinclair in communications, so we're ready to go.
Are there any questions for Marla about the portal? She and Michael would be the ones to answer about that, not me. Council? No. That's going to be a great addition. Again, anyone who's listening that wants to get involved, you'll be able to sign up directly, and when a leadership position becomes available, then maybe you can be contacted by the city. So thank you, Marla.
Wonderful, thank you.
In terms of other things that we have done just through this effort, collecting all the oaths, the RDC, the EDC, the RDA, The clerk treasurer's office have redone their oaths. That's been, again, things that needed to happen, that happen regularly, and that we are up to speed, so to speak, there. There's a few things that, on moving forward, that we'll have to do, just a couple that I'll address at the end. But we wanted to talk just specifically about a couple boards, and I wanted to turn it over to Mayor Cook now. So we do have a new commission, the Preservation Commission, and Mayor, would you like to talk about those appointees?
Sure. We have 5 appointees. This is part of our State Road 32 project that, in dealing with NDOT, is something that we are required to address in our downtown area. And I have the 5 appointees here by my office, and they include Diane Payton, Kevin Miller, Randy Zentz, Melody Jones, and Teresa Skelton.
Thank you to all those people. Thank you, Mayor. Last but not least, just in terms of going forward, anything that's not completed yet, there are still a couple I's to dot and T's to cross that we're still working on. Dr. Keene is actually out of the country as we speak. We need to speak with Dr. Keene about continued involvement in a couple commissions here. I did speak with Brian Kirchhoff today about the Fire Merit Board, and I've talked to the mayor today as well. We have 3 appointments for the Fire Merit Board that the term has expired, and we need to either reappoint the 2 mayoral appointees and the 1 council appointee, or appoint someone new. So that is something we'll get to, we can work on as early as tomorrow. We have, we can make decisions in the future about who all should take an oath. I know Manny weighed in on that regarding the BZA, and I know some places even have department heads take oaths. Those are things that our city in the future can look at and talk through. And then legal right now is helping us with the issue of surety bonds and who all needs to be bonded and who all currently is bonded and who is not, just to make sure that we are properly taking care of our people there and following through with all steps that we should take. So I think that's pretty much it. Is there any other questions for the Oversight Committee or for Marla or the mayor?
No, guess no questions. Councilor Gilbert?
So again, thanks for all the hard work. Marla and I have spent a lot of time, but really she has spent a ton of time, and Kevin has spent a ton of time, and I've just kind of helped present. But thank you so much for everybody involved.
And I would like to thank you also, both of you, for the time and effort that you put through, and everybody else involved. Boy, that new website is pretty slick. I like that. Great idea. Great idea.
So some of these records and things that we were looking back went all the way back to even the 70s. I mean, so there was a lot of research done to make sure that we're lined up with terms and everything. It was a lot of work by the people who did the work.
Thank you, Councilor Gilbert. Okay, our next item will be a presentation of the RDC fourth quarter and year-end report by Linda Nass and Bob Beaudry, council's representatives on the RDC.
All right, good evening, council, mayor. As you know, I'm Bob Beaudry. This is Linda Nass, and it's my fortunate duty to give you the year-end and fourth quarter report for the RDC from your appointees. And just in brief summary, I basically just summarized, in the interest of time, the basic topics. I mean, we all go through the same stuff when it comes to quorum and approval of claims and things like that. So, and I'm dealing with a little bit of a raspy voice, so excuse me a little bit. But, so basically, we started off October 13th, and we talked about the active battery training grant with a presentation. They were seeking a $75,000 grant for 2 years for some additional training and some new hires. There was a standby land transfer agreement in Grand Millennium that pertained to the land sale for the medical office building. Seeking approval for some financing restructuring. We got a third quarter Grand Park presentation and budget from Matt and the group. And then we talked with John Rogers presented the overlapping taxing unit presentation that included discussions on future projects, needed, wanted, whatever, and budgets, the budget, RDC budget. And we also talked about the little bit of house cleaning we needed to do to deal with the land transfer that was I guess applied improperly on the Union Square deal, which we fixed, or John fixed. But in the overlapping, going back to the overlapping taxing unit presentation and the budgets and all, again, I mean, raising concerns over, and I know I've brought this up in the past, but still feel like that council needs to approve an operational budget. And so we need to stop using our core 4 or our cash positive EDAs to finance everything through the RDC. It's really not per Indiana code. It's how many other cities in the state operate, and it's our feeling that that's how we should be operating here. And it would be your duty to approve an operational budget so the RDC can address its needs. So anyway, moving on to November, we ratified a bunch of Grand Park user agreements, as is customary. We set the 2023 calendar for the meetings and discussed the Osborne Trails confirmatory resolution, which I think we've also discussed some in the past. So I guess there's no reason to revisit that. It's a done deal. I will, I guess, throw in that Linda and I voted against it, so not that it mattered. We did finally, we approved the active training grant, and then at that time, that meeting, Jeremy Lawler stated the need for the RDC to assume legal fees that have been incurred through the course of RDC business. And the intent was to fund these through EDAs that had cash balances. And again, I raised concerns because it's not the right way to operate. But I know it got kicked back from council, and so really the options were limited. And Linda had questioned what we could pay out of the EDAs for legal and how they would be applied, because you're really not supposed to pull money out of one EDA to service another. That's really not the intent. And if that is the plan, or if the feeling is that EDA is going to benefit from paying a bill in another one, there needs to be a plan in place to reflect that. There's not. I don't think I've ever seen one. So moving on to December. We ratified another group of Grand Park user agreements. There was a consent disposition for the land transfer agreement that went through on the medical office buildings. We got a Colts training camp report and recap from Grand Park, and also the user agreement with Gaylor Electric out at Grand Park. And again, we had a lengthy discussion on the payment of the legal fees out of RDC TIF funds, and how they are paid, and actually who authorized them. I mean, we had a lot of fees. I don't even remember the exact amount, but it was what, several $100,000. And a lot of the fees were for the RFP process going through with Grand Park. However, we just had questions because, the resolution was never presented to the RDC in the first place to initiate the RFP for that. So we're just, the approvals or the votes never funneled through our commission. And also, I think that's the first time we received an updated budget that kind of varied from the one we had actually voted on in October. And this budget included legal fees that were added in for the 2023 RDC budget and what EDAs those fees would be pulled from. Well, we never voted on that. And I have the original one that we voted on that was approved. So that was my only observation. And I don't know, do you have anything you want to add?
No, that was.
Okay. So I guess in summary, that's pretty much it. And we're available for questions.
So Bob, you said, as I understand it, the RDC budget then was presented in October and approved by the RDC in
Yes.
October.
Yes,
Okay. And that budget did not include any legal expenses.
correct.
Okay, thank you. Councilors, any other comments?
That budget that we approved in October, and it took this format, if you've seen it, there's budget pages in this. We also increased the TIF services funds in each TIF district from $68,500 a year to $157,500 a year. And the explanation was that that was going to be for some new projects, big projects coming to the city. So perhaps if those don't come to the city, those fund balances or those budget balances could change throughout the year. The budgets for the repayment, I think you said on the $6 million to the city for the Grand Park, that was budgeted to several different TIF districts here. And I think those were the only other. So we have seen a copy, and we talked about it a little bit the last couple months. We've seen a changed budget, but we haven't approved it yet, okay? So if you have questions about that, you can ask us later. Going forward into the year, I just wanted to say that we always have reports coming up, and one of the reports coming up are the required reports. One is, the June 15th report where we have to, every year we're required to go back and look at an annual reporting process to determine what amount, if any, of captured assessed value should be passed through to underlying taxing units. And it states that, in fact, it's the legislative body, you all, who, of the unit, that have the power to approve the redevelopment commission's determination or modify the amount of the excess assessed value to be passed through to underlying taxing units. So if you do a study of the TIF districts, which at the end of, at the end of 2022, we had like $10,600,000 in TIF districts, okay? And going into 2023 and paying off the $6 million, we'll have an increase. We'll actually have $14,130,000. And so the intent of TIF is not to just grow those funds. Every year you have to review and look for what is the plan that was in the EDA. Are we meeting that? Have we changed it? Do we need more money? Do we not need more money? And at the end of 2022, you will see that we still have, we use a lot of the Grand Junction TIF, but there's other things that should be in the Grand Junction TIF that are being paid out of other TIFs, like the East Side TIF pays for the 2018 Grand Park bond that's $1.74 million a year. We're still paying that out of East Side. And there's other things like we bought some the SEP trailhead. Well, the SEP has its own TIF, but we paid for that out of the Grand Junction TIF. And I would like to suggest that you look at what Greg Yeritas puts together. He puts together a really good report where he draws dollars and balances and he makes projections. But everything in here is where he has actuals and budgets, those are literally what you approve and what the actuals have been in past years. So if you look at just the TIF funds from 301 on down, you'll see where these, what these funds are looking like, if they're healthy or if they're not. And you can also kind of quickly see what gets paid out of them. And, we've had some discussions of, are we paying the right things out of the right TIFs? And I would just ask you to kind of look at that before you have any discussions or any questions on that. But that's where you'll find that that the East Side TIF is paying the 1.74 million every year for the Grand Park bond. And then if you'll notice at the bottom of these pages, he gives us these like once a year. I think John and others see them more often, but once a year we get them to where we can print them. So like at the bottom of the Grand Junction TIF Fund 305, it says, note, beginning in 2024, a portion of the Grand Junction debt is assumed to be paid from this fund. A portion, not all of it, but a portion. And then beginning in 2025, the payment for the 2016 Grand Park Land and Construction Bond is assumed to be paid from this fund and not the general fund. So currently that's coming out of the general fund. So you just find some of these handy notes that I've been reading this for many, many years, so I know where to look, but there's some good information in this report about TIFs per se, plus about a whole lot of other parts of the city budget, okay? So I thought I'd point that out. Did you have anything else? I think that was it. Any questions?
Yeah, a quick question. So in the various TIFs, have you started the process of identifying development projects within each TIF?
Not really in detail. When you see an EDA come through, and the most recent was like the Osborne Trails, within that EDA, and there's a declaratory resolution, well, that's just the really simple part of it, but there's a plan within that on how we're gonna use the monies. And sometimes it's very vague or just general, so pretty much we could throw anything in there that we want. But even as the Grand Junction TIF has grown and changed over the years, and some of these TIFs, a lot of them we've had since 2007, 2008, most of them last for 25 years. But as you look through them and go back to the original plan, that's maybe not the plan today. But every year, we are required by code, Indiana code, to go back, look at the plan. Are we still doing this? Do we need to change it? Because if, for example, in some districts, we're collecting too many millions of dollars or too many dollars, we can let that pass through because we don't really have a project. Or you could go to that district and look for a project and say, okay, East Side, maybe we need to do this. But it's all, it's all written out in Indiana code, so it's not that hard to figure it out. But we are going to have a growth in these TIF funds this year. That could, there could be a decision before the June 15th deadline to maybe pass some of it through if we don't need
Okay,
it all.
so to be clear, and you guys have been on there for a couple of years now on the MDC. Is there a strategic plan in place for each TIF with respect to what infrastructure projects you want to accomplish within those TIFs? And any type of priority in place?
We don't really even discuss that as far as the commission. Mr. Treat with O.W. Crone helps to do that. Perhaps, I think Greg Garatos, some of his numbers. But the Indiana Code, and there's a handbook for redevelopment commissions and their lawyers, and there's a new one out October of last year done by an attorney firm that kind of goes through this and suggests. They even have a form here where you fill in the blanks, what do you need to do? We don't discuss this as a commission. We don't really vote this as a commission, although that's what code says. It just happens, okay? And we may vote to forward a letter to Lee Graham at Hamilton County Auditor's Office to say, here's what we want you to capture. But I think you all are pretty familiar, we capture 100% all the time. And then and we've done this last fall, when there's a district that has no revenues, we can just, we just vote to end that TIF because it's not going to have anything. Like Lantern Commons, we ended that TIF, we opened it up as Front Street. But we don't really have a detailed plan of what to put in there. It's just general. It says, like infrastructure, what you're allowed to put in a plan. But we don't have a specific plan. But hopefully, every year you look at it and go, okay, do we have a specific plan? Do we want to leave it as it is? What do we want to do? But there's nothing happening at Front Street EDA, so there's no money coming in from there. Anyway, but on the commission, as we read the Indiana Code and take our oath every year, we are supposed to go through this and read this and see if we're doing, doing our due diligence. So I just wanted to share that with you.
So Ms. Nass, are you saying that you make a lot of code and innuendos of improprieties? I have to refer to our legal counsel. Are we processing everything through the RDC exactly 100% legally?
Yes.
Thank you.
We just don't vote on certain things, they just happen. That's our experience.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's up to interpretation. I mean, I guess it's been going on this way for years, but it's not the way it goes on in other cities. So, I mean, I guess it depends on how you want to interpret it. That's one of the reasons I'm usually pretty vocal in voicing my concerns about when it comes to sub-allocation areas. When you go to TIFs and you break out sub-allocation areas, well, we don't know what the implications are going to be. All we know is that what is actually going to happen in that sub-allocated area. But you're dealing with a TIF that's already been established in that EDA, and not knowing what's going to be left when you break it apart. Is there enough left to cover what you've already obligated? And so you're just, my concern would be you just keep chasing your tail. It's perpetual debt. And there's no opportunity to have a plan for reducing the balances, to have more of that money pass through to the schools, libraries, and so forth. So maybe we don't need as much in referendums and things of that nature. Now, maybe it won't happen, maybe it will. I don't know, but we don't have the plan in place where we can see it. I don't think we ever have. So, that's been my concern, and moving forward, I guess if I was 20 years younger, I'd be really concerned about it, but, because who knows what's going to happen 10 years down the road. I think if you look at the state sustainability report and some of these EDA areas, it might surprise you, but there's going to be some interesting things going on within the next 4 years, and some of you guys that are running for the next term of mayor, you're going to be dealing with it. So if I were, I would just go through it and look it over and be prepared. That's all I can say.
The last EDA we approved, as Bob said earlier, was the Osborne Trails. But the plan wasn't very clear what we were going to do with it. And even though it was kind of set up to make maybe $22,000, but in speaking with, Public Works and our executive director, we were going to need much more money than that. So what were we going to spend this amount of money on? We asked, was it a specific phase, or what was this amount of money? So you can't check, what did we spend this money on? Was it what we said? Are we looking for other monies, or what have you? So that was specific about that. We wanted more information. Well, I certainly did before I voted for that one. That's all.
Thank
Any
you,
other
Linda.
questions? I'd be happy to answer.
Questions?
Okay.
Yes, not, thank you.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Okay, next presentation then will be by Commissioner Plankus on the RDC budget for 2023.
Okay, good evening, councilors, Mayor Cook. What I'd like to do first, Joe Plankus, 514 Stockbridge Drive, and as Mike indicated, I'm on the commission as president of the commission of the Westfield RDC. I'd like to make a couple comments first, just to have some clarification, I think, on a document you all received last Friday in regards to our budget. The cash balances shown for the 2023 budget are the actual beginning balances for the year. We now have a line item for legal fees, which through ordinance will now be paid by the RDC for RDC-related legal fees. This was an agreement with the council that we would pick up those fees in the RDC. Those dollar account amounts were established by Jeremy and Manny after reviewing the 2022 actuals and calculating what they anticipate the cost to be for 2023, including a maximum $100,000 for the Grand Park RFP expenses. As per agreement between the RDC and the City Council, we have budgeted the $6 million for the loan payback to be taken from 4 different TIF funds. That is shown as a separate line item under the various EDAs for our 2023 budget. The tax increment revenue we are anticipating receiving in 2023 was calculated based on a 7.9% reduction in the city tax rate and the increased assessed value within each of the individual TIF districts. Now I will entertain any questions you may have in addition to the questions that were previously addressed by Councilors Willis and Gilbert. Those are the only 2 questions I received over the weekend. So I'll turn it over to you, Mike, and Commission or council members if you have any questions. I would like to make one correction. When we talk about what the funds are for the RDC beginning of the year, it's a little over 16 million. That's what the beginning balance is. It's not 10 million, and it will drop to 14 million, mainly because of the large payment for the 6 million that comes back to the council.
Council questions?
This is Troy Patton. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, hey Joe, just a real quick question. Listening to Bob and Linda, they were saying that some of these numbers have changed, and maybe you acknowledge that with the legal fees. So has the budget changed, and have you voted on that?
No, the budget was just what we presented to the council here on Friday, Troy, was the revised budget taking into account the legal fees, which we had not budgeted when we voted on the budget in October. That came later. So that has to be voted on yet by the RDC, and that will be done at our next meeting.
Okay, and then just kind of follow up, Joe. So the amounts that are being paid on legal from one TIF district to the next, it's my understanding, and I've listened to the gal at the State Board of Accounts, and I apologize because I can't recall her name off the top of my head. And she said that is not allowed. And I understand that, maybe our legal says it is, but, it's concerning that when the State Board of Accounts says, we cannot do something, and we go ahead and do it anyways. Have you spoke to anyone at the State Board of Accounts, Joe?
We've had.
Can I jump in, Joe? Sorry,
Yeah.
I know what Mr. Patton is, because it's a legal question, I want to address it. So Councilman Patton, I listened to the same State Board of Accounts presentation or exchange. She didn't say it was improper. She said it's proper as long as it serves and benefits that TIF. And the way that the bills were presented to the RDC, and I know you don't have the benefit of seeing them, so I know that. They're allocated, the fees are allocated for, and I'm having feedback, for the particular EDA where they're spent and where it serves and benefits. So it's completely appropriate.
Is what I would recommend you do, Manny. I mean, just for my own, self, is I've listened to her, and I would agree. She would say it's proper if those legal fees pertain to that TIF, but I think we're stretching it by throwing some of those legal fees into these other TIFs where I'm not sure what that benefit is to that TIF. I would, again, it's just me. Manny, I would work with the State Board of Accounts and get them to approve or to say that what we are doing is accurate. I mean, as opposed to them saying, hey, it's not, and we're saying, yes, it is, and we just kind of let it go. obviously, you know, I'd like it to follow the kind of the letter of the law that that the State Board of Accounts is stating. And again, I did hear her say unequivocally that the way we were doing it was improper, that it was not correct. Now, again, I mean, you can disagree with that, but anyways, that's just my.
No, no, it's all right. I agree with you when you said that. She said as long as it serves and benefits, and that is in the code, and that is what our determination is based on. I had Cam go through and make a almost line by line determination of which entries serve and benefit which TIF, and that's how the bills were presented back in mid to late December to meet Madam Clerk's deadline. So I think we're on the same page.
Yeah.
I make a
Yeah.
determination about what's legal, and we're fully comfortable with how it's been presented. But I get your point.
Okay. Okay.
Did you
Okay,
present that to
yeah.
the RDC? Sounds like that may be helpful.
I'm sorry?
Did what you just said in terms of when you went through line by line to present the legal fees and how they worked across various EDAs, has that info of your determination been given to the RDC?
No, and I don't think there's a need to. Then we're A, burdening the SBOA, and B, giving them a power they don't have, which is to offer a legal opinion on what the serve and benefit test means under the code. So that's a bit of a slippery slope. We're very, very comfortable that those determinations were accurate.
Just a presentation to them in terms of, they don't have a legal weigh-in, we know that. But
Right.
you saying, clearly, they got up here and presented that they feel uninformed. So there's an opportunity there, is all I'm saying.
Yeah, no, don't have a problem with talking to anybody about it. Absolutely.
Yeah, I would agree with Jake on that.
Joe, what concerns me is that this is like, and I went through the budget pretty carefully. I didn't have any questions, but it was the third budget I've seen now since October. I saw the October budget, I saw one that was done in January, and now I've seen this one. And everyone is slightly different than the other one. And each one of those, the revenue projections is lower than the previous one. So it's up here in budget one, it's a little lower in budget two, it's a little lower in
That's not
budget
true.
three. Well, that is true, Joe. I've got,
The revenue numbers were recalculated, and I'll ask John Rogers to confirm this. The numbers were recalculated based on a new the numbers that are here are recalculated based on a new tax rate, which we didn't get until a couple weeks ago, and the new assessed value that we received from the county.
and that's my question, did the numbers come down because of the new tax rate? Do you know?
Well, the tax rate came down, so there is less funding, but basically we're trying to balance it. Did the assessed value go up enough to cover the drop because of the almost 8% reduction in the rate? And you'd have to look at each individual one.
All right, yeah.
And see what the difference is. I think we also need to clarify some things. We're not just sitting here as an RDC with a pile of cash, just thinking, oh, my gosh, what are we gonna do with this? We gotta pass it through. No, we have a 5-year plan. That shows where all the bond money gets paid from. It shows what the expenses are. Sustainability helps drive that process. Now, what we have to do next is, what is the dollar amount we as the RDC feel and the city feels is a safe amount to have in reserves, because opportunities come up. You've worked on those, Mike. You have to come up with some cash. Where do you get that cash? The RDC is the mechanism to be able to do that when opportunities come forward. So from that point, we need to find what that happy balance might be, considering what the opportunities might be going forward. Now, so then maybe there's some excess cash, so now we prioritize. The council has submitted a ton of priorities, if you will, as you know, and I think, as I remember, the figures was somewhere around $150, $160 million in different road projects alone and other projects that go along with it. So now maybe we work together and say, okay, how do we use those funds to meet some of those priorities for the city of Westfield? So it's just not, and if you talk to Brian Michael, who's the CFO at the school, he's fine with how things are being handled. So I think it's very important that we have to get that party, because they're the largest taxing body, as far as the amount of money they collect because they're taking care of the very fine schools that we have, and they've done a great job with that. And their tax rates are coming down.
Well, Joe, I agree with you. I think we need to, over the next, hopefully, few months, establish what that dollar amount is that
And
we need to hold
we'll
in
be
reserve.
working on that, but we
Okay?
just got done
And-
doing the revision of the budget because of the new tax rate and everything. We couldn't do anything until we knew what those figures actually were.
And then at that point, if we could also start to look at each one of those TIFs and identify specific projects in those TIFs. Because you're right, the council gave you a whole wish list of things. And if you take the whole thing, it's gonna be pretty hard to try to.
Well, I think we
wheel it. So
prioritize,
if
Mike,
we-
what the real project is that wants to be done. I don't think we go kind of backwards and go to the TIF first. Let's look at what the priority is for the community and, whether it's public safety or something else, and then look at that and determine where that funds are gonna come from. Because we are able to move funds from one TIF to another. That's been allowed. We've done that forever, and it is within legal means to do that, contrary to other people's opinion.
I would, I would like to say, I was a participant many moons ago in the first TIF. I was on the town council and
You're talking about Village Park Plaza?
Village Park Plaza.
Yeah. County TIF.
And that's been revised and renewed many times. And I see nothing wrong with that as long as it serves the purpose. The problem that you would get into is, we could have who's not, I don't think you can guard against every eventuality, but you can guard against some. And a collapse in the economy, which could happen because of, inflation and that sort of thing, the profits could be driven down from these businesses.
That's correct.
And
Assessments can go down.
and I think we have to be, fairly balanced, fairly cautious about what we do. And I think we have done that in this case. The reason I asked for the legal fees to be paid out of the TIFs, because that's where the work was being done.
Absolutely, we have no problem with that.
And we need to develop a formula to determine what that is. And I don't know whether you can, but Joe, can you be a little more clear? We need to develop a formula to do what? Well, to determine what the proper amount of the legal fees are. And
Well,
to
Joe,
re-
that's going to
to
vary
reserve.
about the different projects that should come up and opportunities. That's a very dynamic piece.
But if you look at the obligations, our obligations are probably not that bad. But if you look at the obligations of some of our surrounding communities, Carmel's is $1.2 billion, I think. And if the economy trips, they have trouble. They have a bit of trouble.
Quite honestly, Joe, I'm not worried about Carmel. I take care of Westfield. That's where my sworn allegiance is. And we're going to try to do the best darn job for the public in Westfield.
The overflow.
All the rest of that is smoke.
Well, but the overflow would come. Hamilton County is blessed.
Yes, we are.
And we need to take hold of that blessing and make sure that we manage it properly. That's all I'm saying.
We absolutely are dedicated to doing that. Okay, any other questions?
Joe, I just had one
Yes.
more. I'm sorry, I would have asked this over the email, but
That's all right.
maybe I didn't understand. You'd mentioned the maximum on the Grand Park RFP. What is that amount?
In working with Manny and Jeremy, that will be the maximum amount of legal fees that will be charged to us. If the fees are higher than that, we will not get charged a higher amount, carrying the RFP forward for 2023.
Do we have a total on what that maximum is?
Well, right now, it's 100,000 is what's in the
100,000?
budget, and it's not gonna go over, our expenses will not go over that. We will not have to pay more than that.
Thank you.
So where will the rest of the expenses come from?
It'll be a gift.
Excuse me?
We won't have to pay the rest. If they go over $100,000, that's their problem. That's the way it was set up.
So they're capping their.
They're capping their
Wh- wh-
expenses
what-
to us
What we're
at
trying to explain
100,000.
there is that they are capping their billable hours related to the RFP at $100,000.
That's correct.
Is that a fair statement, Manny?
Yeah, that's in the engagement letter. It's a similar not to exceed that you have.
Okay?
So Joe, do you think you will have enough in your legal fund then for the rest of the year? And I ask that because you've budgeted 350,000, you've got 162,000 was already spent, and you've got 100,000 going to TAF, so that's 262 already spent. So that leaves you with, what is it, 85 or something?
Based on the lack of development that's taking place right now, Mike, I don't think that'll be a problem. Okay, anything else?
Let me follow up on that, because many of these legal fees are what? Excuse me. Many of the legal fees are incurred when we go through development agreement opportunities. And it's hard to say what's going to happen next month. So this has to be somewhat fluid as we're looking at. I know you want firm number for this legal and firm. If an opportunity comes around tomorrow, I'm not going to say, sorry, we can't do it, because we don't have the legal fees in the budget. And I think you'll go along with that. But it's a very fluid situation with the RDC on legal fees.
If we have a big project coming forward, our obligation to the community is to take care of that project. And if we have to balance the budget in some way, we would try to balance it. And if we have to go over it, the funds are there. That's why you try to keep a reserve so that you have the funds available for those kinds of opportunities.
You know, Joe, we don't get to talk a lot, but I'm going to ask you if you could look into one thing for me.
Sure.
I've read that it's possible that an RDC can actually purchase land for the city.
we did.
And I would encourage us to look more into that as we move toward the future. I think some of our sister cities are doing that and then using it for economic development.
Buying parkland or industrial land, yeah. And that's something that will be rolled into our analysis as we look at the strategic plan for what we want to do once we determine how many funds we really have available.
I'd like to hear more of that. Come on back when you're ready and give us some good news.
I would love to give you more good news.
All right.
Thank you.
Counselors? That's it. Thank you, Joe. Okay, the next presentation is on the 2022 year-end budget review. And I guess Jeremy Lawler, you're going to be prepared for this?
Yeah, I believe Marla put together a presentation. I assumed that since this was the clerk's work product, that they were presenting it, but I can read it to you if, or
No, I
answer
just
questions.
assumed that you were going to do the budget review, the quarterly typical review, and they give you some extra oomph.
So yeah, we don't have the quarterly review report yet. At least I don't have it yet, or we would be prepared for that. This is a breakdown of the legal spending across the organization. This $162,000 is what you were all just referencing. That was 2022 dollars invoiced in late November, I think, approved in December, but has not yet been paid. So that is the reason for the additional $160,000 in the RDC's budget for legal bills, because they weren't paid in 22 as they should have been. So we have to budget for them now, which is what grew that number by $160,000. You can also see the clerks and the city councils factored in there, as well as city admin. Total comes out to $966,000. As we've talked about, we now have or will have 3 not to exceeds. RDC has one for 150. The city council has one for 600, and then there will be one coming forward for Grand Park RFP, which is $100,000, but hopefully we will not spend that much. So you add up all those numbers, it's less than 966. So in my mind, we're heading the right direction.
I went to Butler University a long time ago, and that left-hand column doesn't add up right.
You will have to ask Marla Ayler about that. I did not do that math. So, you know, Butler University taught you pretty well, because you're correct. That does not add up.
Yeah.
So you got 702 plus the 85, basically. It does not equal this. Yeah.
That's one thing I did
won't-
get from Butler.
Yeah. Roughly in my head, that makes that what, 707?
I think you take 350
something.
off of that, I don't think the transfer from Public Works is included in there. So if you eliminate that, you just go 352 plus 10,000 plus 75 should equal the 437.
Oh, yeah, that's what it's saying. Original budget was down here at this 437.
Yeah, that's your original.
That's the difference. So, all right, this is a budget versus actual for the, I guess, the different departments. I need to move Mr. Patton if I can, so we can see the rest of this. As you can see, this is a different presentation than I got, I think. Well, anyway, the blue is budgeted, the orange is actual, and then in some of these, like admin and human resources and clerk treasurer and the trash fund, there's a gray. That's a transfer amount, so that's that $350,000 we just talked about from Public Works over. This is a better slide, in my opinion. This shows budget versus actual and actual dollars. One thing that I didn't quite understand on this slide was it only includes about 20% of the overall city budget. The other 80, which comes from Public Works, Fire, Police, MVH, LRS, are not included on this sheet. So I did some rough calculations. What I can tell you is that we finished in these, so if you add all these up, we came in 12.97% under budget. So there was $1.2 million of money reserved for the next year's spend. And holistically, when you go across all departments, which is $47 million of spend, we came in 17.81% under budget, which is roughly $8.4 million. Overall, I think we did a pretty good job. I want to applaud the department heads and the folks that manage these budgets. They did a really nice job managing their resources this year.
I would agree with you on that, Jeremy. I think as I looked at that, I saw 3 departments over budget: admin, clerk, treasurer, and HR. But everybody else was under budget or met. And over the course of a year, I think that's pretty good performance. Pretty good.
Yeah,
performance.
and the transfers are a little misleading, right? $350,000 from one department to another. When you look at it holistically, we didn't spend $1.2 million, so the $350,000 or $377,000 of transfers really were just a function of balancing like budget lines. So we really didn't go over budget and need to transfer any money.
So we had a pretty good budget.
We did
And
well.
you guys did a pretty good job.
That's right.
The one thing on this graph, though, the one thing that concerns me, and we've talked about this before, is that economic development. We just, I think, hopefully, moving forward, we can increase the dollars in that budget. Because it just, when I look at some of the areas, how much we're spending in different areas, and we get over economic development, it just doesn't seem like we got enough in there for what we want to get done.
Yeah, and I won't speak for Kai. I think he can certainly speak for himself. I think our focus of economic development should be on having available land, zoned and approved commercial industrial type land that is available for us to pursue economic development opportunities more so. So this is just salary, so staff and operating costs basically is that $200,000 plus some travel and seminar type stuff. But no, we all agree economic development is a huge priority. Whether we do it with additional people or not, I don't know if that's necessary. What we really need to think holistically is how do we best set ourselves up for recruiting the type of economic development that we want and being available when it comes knocking on the door.
I agree.
Any other questions for me?
Is there anything else? I don't think so. Thank you, Jeremy.
You bet.
Great presentation. Okay. Moving on then to old business. The first item under old business this evening is ordinance 22-37, authorizing the city of Westfield to become a member of the Central Indiana Regional Development Authority. This item had a council introduction, if you recall, back on August 22nd, and was up for adoption consideration on September 12th. At that point in time, the council voted to continue to a future meeting, looking for additional information. It is up for adoption consideration this evening, and I think we're going to, Jeremy, can you give us more insight, and then Manny support you?
Yeah, certainly. I can get it going. Mandy's here also with some legal information if you need that. But just as it was the first time when we introduced it, so CIRTA, or Central Indiana Regional Development Authority, us joining that agency would allow us to pursue federal and state dollars for projects largely that would have a regional economic development impact or regional impact. So think of, I mean, it specifically lists infrastructure, road infrastructure, airports, greenways, things like that. So as you know, the state of Indiana has the Indiana Ready Grant money available to the tune of $300 million, assuming it gets passed, of course. Us being in this is the only way that we can pursue any of those dollars. So that's really the driver behind it, us being part of this larger organization. There's zero cost of entry right now. There is a few 5-year commitment, I believe, that we would be committing to. Full disclosure, and I think anyone that you talk to in CIRTA would tell you that there comes a time where there's likely going to be an administrative cost associated with it as this march down the road. That would be, I assume, and being at the table will allow us to help decide how that gets divvied up, but it is not dissimilar to what we do with other organizations that we're a part of. For example, the Metropolitan Planning Organization, we pay an annual fee, roughly $19,000 to be a part of the MPO, but we have many, many millions of dollars of return on that investment through federal funding. So I foresee this being a similar type situation. If the time comes that there needs to be a staff associated with this CIRTA. Right now, the different entities, largely Fishers, is carrying the burden of the administrative costs here and doing it with the internal staff.
I noticed one of the sections on here is section 4, ex officio member. It says the mayor of the consolidated city of Indianapolis is an ex officio officer of the committee. Does this mean that person has a vote, or what does it mean?
It does not. It's a function of Indianapolis's size. So they get a voting member, which is described in section 1.
I understand this,
And
but
then
this is not an addition.
Correct. It's an addition to the committee, but he gets to sit in, say anything he wants, and not vote.
Okay.
Good question.
The other thing I think we need to understand too is, I know state legislators, one of their priorities was to put more money into this program in this upcoming budget. So I think this is where the state's trending. Mm-hmm. It's been highly successful for those communities that are playing in this space. And I think, we're missing out every day we're not involved. So I'm certainly supportive of this program.
Yeah, that's a key point, because in order to get funding, it says it in there, projects funded by the RDA must be of regional importance, which almost by definition means you need to be a part of the RDA. So that's going to be something we're going to look forward to with any proposal we have individually. So basically, if we have an individual proposal, it's not going to get any ready.
There's a description in there that says the Indianapolis-Anderson map. I think that's what it calls it, the map. And if you look at that, I know there is a huge plan lurking out there that says you were gonna have trails and whatever, to from Indianapolis to Anderson. Now, that's a lot of trail, that's a lot of land acquisition, but those are some of the things that are being thought about. But I would hope that we would also garner some economic development out of this too.
I've got a question, if I may. On section 2, it says, and I guess this is for Manny, or,
Which article?
Are we working in the resolution?
I'm sorry.
That's where Joe's question, it's fine, I'm just trying.
Yeah, that's all right. Is it in the resolution?
So I'm on the ordinance.
Section 2,
Council.
the plan?
Where it just says the council shall adopt the
Yep.
plan.
The plan.
That is what we're going to see here for 22-114.
Correct.
That plan still lacks specific detail as to administrative costs and things like that. So by approving this, we're saying we're going to go ahead and approve 22-14.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
So the explanation with comparing this to other groups that we're a part of, I think you said $19,000 was kind of what the annual fee would be for something like that.
That's for the MPO. I have no idea what this would be, but I would assume that the RDA would have to amend the plan amongst themselves for that to change.
That is correct.
So we're accepting this plan, the one that exists today, that has no administrative costs in it. Once we're part of the committee, if the committee chooses to modify the plan, then they would do that as a part of the voting members.
Or in a similar vein, modify its bylaws, which
Right.
which could have those sorts of fees associated with it. But passing this guarantees you have a vote in that, in what those expenses might be.
So we have an opportunity right now with essentially no obligation, any obligation, financial obligation that would come down the pipe, we would have to approve that at that point in time,
That's my
or be
understanding.
a part of that process of approval.
Yeah, that's my understanding. I haven't seen the bylaws that might specify something else, but as far as, I think Jeremy, the mayor, and I know, there's no joining fee, there's no annual fee that's associated with being a part of the RDA.
So you wouldn't have a veto over the fee in the future. You would have a vote on the fee in the future.
All right, thank you.
If I may, I want to further address Councilor Edwards' question about economic development. That is what this whole program is about. You know, the legislature has, I think wisely, for the very first time in Indiana history, is encouraging cities to gather together in a region, and the purpose of this is to create projects of regional significance that will attract a workforce, retain our young people. That's the whole purpose of this. And I think it's very encouraging that the state recognizes that it's not just a city by city by city basis, but it's the region, so that we can put our resources together. So I think it's very encouraging. This is the second year the legislature, if they pass it, will fund it. It's something cities have been asking for many years.
Counselors, any other questions, concerns? Manny, would you think there'd be any negative to Westfield, since we're a little bit of the late comer to this program?
Only in the sense that there might be potential regional projects in the pipeline that you haven't had a vote on yet. But then, of course, the longer you're in there, the more that's gonna equalize, right? So from that standpoint, no. Otherwise, you have a seat at the table, which is, I think, the main issue.
All right, if there's no additional comments, do I have a motion to approve ordinance 22-37?
I move to approve ordinance 22-37, authorizing the city of Westfield to become a member of the Central Indiana Regional Development Authority.
Second.
Move, second? Okay. Joe. Okay. Motion was made by Counselor Gilbert, seconded by Counselor Edwards. Kim, would you call the roll, please?
Troy Patton,
Yes.
Scott Fry,
Yes.
Mike Johns,
Yes.
Jake Gilbert,
Yes.
Scott Willis,
Yes.
Joe Edwards.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Okay, okay.
Council, I'd like to thank you for your reconsideration of this. I think it will be very beneficial in the years to come.
Thank you, Mayor. Then let's move on to Resolution 22-114, adopting a preliminary strategic economic development plan for the Central Indiana Regional Development Authority. This is the associated resolution. Council introduction was on August 22nd. Adoption consideration initially on September 12th, and it's up for adoption consideration this evening. Do I have a motion to approve Resolution 22-114?
So moved.
Have a second?
I'll second that.
Motion made by Counselor Edwards, seconded by Counselor Willis. Kim, would you call the roll?
Scott Willis,
Yes.
Joe Edwards,
Yes.
Scott Fry,
Yes.
Mike Johns,
Yes.
Jake Gilbert,
Yes.
Troy Patton.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. Moving on to Resolution 23-100, approving certain amendments to the Grand Junction Economic Development Area and the allocation area. This item has a council introduction on, had one on January 23rd, and is up for adoption consideration this evening. And Jeremy, can you give us an overview, please?
Yeah, certainly. So, much like we've done on a couple of the other TIFs, there's an effort by the RDC as well as the administration to clean up some of our TIF areas and remove residential parcels from the economic development areas. That is the case here for Resolution 2023, specifically amending the Grand Junction Economic Development Area. It says, declaratory resolution has been approved by the RDC back in November of 22. The Plan Commission approved the order in December of 22. You all are approving the order approval. These are the list of parcels that would be removed from the Grand Junction TIF. All are residential. There's a large amount of them. Quit fighting with me, Kevin. Easier to see here is some, also, let me back up a little bit. So, and this is the same case for both of these. After the declaratory resolution, there was Kevin's team, as well as me and John Rogers, elected to put some parcels back into the TIF. So they will not be removed. And then because they may be residential right now, however, they're prime for commercial development later on. So we elected to put them back in there now as opposed to come back and amending them. So the declaratory or the confirmatory resolutions will be amended to show that. In the Grand Junction TIF, no, this is just a map of the Grand Junction TIF. The EDA North, the south map. I apologize, but these are not the exhibits that I expected.
There's the map of parcels removed, Jeremy, down on the second, yeah, on 101.
Yeah, that's specific to the east side.
I think those are right, Jeremy.
Yeah, those just show the maps. They don't show the specific parcels
Yeah, right.
highlighted. Here in Exhibit A, there's the list of residential parcels that currently exist in the Grand Junction TIF that would be removed from the TIF. And then this second list is a list of the parcels that we have elected to put back in the TIF district. I do believe I emailed you the appropriate maps when I sent this information along to you. Unless they're highlighted in here and I just can't see them. which is possible. I guess with that on this Grand Junction TIF, I'll try to answer any questions that you might have.
Councilors, any questions? Do I have a motion then on Resolution 23-100?
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 23-100.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made by Counselor Willis, seconded by Counselor Patton. Kim, would you call the roll, please?
Joe Edwards,
Yes.
Troy Patton,
Yes.
Scott Willis,
Yes.
Jake Gilbert,
Yes.
Scott Fry,
Yes.
Mike Johns.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Okay. Next item is Resolution 23-101, approving certain amendments to the East Side Economic Development Area and Allocation Area.
Yes, so this same process here, following the same timeline, RDC approval in November of 22, Plan Commission approval in December of 22. Again, removing parcels, residential parcels, as you can see on this hard corner in the East Side TIF. This is all a residential neighborhood. So all of these individual parcels are in the list to be removed, which is this list, as you can see here. Also included in this list is the parcel that we would like for to be put back into the TIF, which is this area right here. To orient you, this is the new Westfield Boulevard. This is David Brown or 169th Street. This is the Roush dealership. You've had a couple projects that have come through that have been angling at this parcel. We don't think this is single-family residential in the future. I don't think that's the highest and best use. So as opposed to having to put it back in a TIF later, we're suggesting that we leave it in the TIF, knowing that we need this roadway connection as a part of the future thoroughfare plan.
Any questions, councilors? Do I have then a motion to approve? Resolution 23-101.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Counselor Fry, seconded by Counselor Edwards. Kim, would you call the roll, please?
Scott Fry,
Yes.
Mike Johns,
Yes.
Joe Edwards,
Yes.
Troy Patton,
Yes.
Jake Gilbert,
Yes.
Scott Willis.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you all.
Next item this evening is ordinance 22-19. This is the Woods Robinson Briggs PUD Amendment 2. This item had a council introduction in June 13th of last year. Public hearing followed on July 5th. It is up APC recommendation on February 6th, where it received a unanimous approval and is up for adoption consideration this evening. And Weston Rogers from our Community Development Department is going to speak.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, council members. For the record, Weston Rogers with the Community Development Department. The item before you this evening is a proposed amendment to the Woods Robinson Briggs PUD. A brief overview of this request includes adding roughly 4.5 acres of additional real estate, modifying the general regulations of District 1, modifying the proposed park trailhead district standards, and replacing the district map, concept plan, and applicable character exhibits with revised versions. A public hearing was held for this item on July 5th, 2022, and a series of workshop discussion meetings were held throughout late 2022 and early 2023 this year. Recently, this item received a favorable recommendation at the February 6th APC meeting. Tonight, this item is eligible for council adoption. The petitioner is here tonight, but does not plan to present. They are available to answer any questions, as am I, should you have any for staff. Thank you.
Councilors, any questions?
I need to say for transparency's sake, in 2019 or 20, the Westfield Restaurant Group donated a space to me, which I then paid back. It's both on my 2020 report. And I believe an owner of that is also involved in the petitioner here.
This item, when it was reviewed by the APC last week, I had a question about it, and that question really came down to the community park, the Trailhead Park that's in there. And my concern was that park would be completed by the developer. And I think Community Development, Kevin Todd, addressed that and assured me that that was in fact the case, that the way the ordinance was written, if the developer did not go through, that we would not grant any additional building permits. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Just, excuse me. There is a provision written into this PUD ordinance that there's a timing mechanism that requires the installation of this particular park. It's District 2 for anybody interested. That it has to be built within a year, I believe. Well, has to be applied for within a year of the first permit of the residential area being issued, and then there's another year beyond that for it to be installed, and ultimately the responsibility lies within the property owner, and if there's subsequent agreements that they have with third parties, that's not really our business. So yes, we will withhold permits in this residential section as outlined in this ordinance if for some reason that park is not built within that essentially 2-year time frame.
So we're protected then?
Yes.
Perfect, thank you. That was my only concern. Any councilors, any other comments? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve ordinance 22-19?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made by Councilor Willis, seconded by Councilor Edwards. Kim, would you please call the roll?
Scott Fry,
Yes.
Scott Willis,
Yes.
Jake Gilbert,
Yes.
Troy Patton,
Yes.
Mike Johns,
Yes.
Joe Edwards.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Okay. Our last item of new business then this evening is interlocal agreement with NDOT, the City of Westfield, regarding State Road 32 and the Mule Barn Road. This item had a council introduction on January 9th and is up for adoption consideration this evening. And I don't know if, yeah, here's John Nail. John can give us a heads up on this one.
Sure. For the record, John Nail, Director of Public Works, City of Westfield. So as we spoke previously on this item, this is an interlocal agreement between the city and Indiana Department of Transportation for the State Road 32 and Mule Barn intersection improvement project. As you recall, the city was planning on doing a widening of Mule Barn Road for quite some time now. And NDOT also recognized that that intersection could use some safety improvements as well, but they were not going to be getting to it for quite some time. So to provide some cost efficiencies, we looked at entering this interlocal agreement, whereas they will provide us up to $1.5 million for the construction costs and right-of-way acquisition costs of the intersection portion of this project. And we will include that in the overall widening project. Same contractor. There's some efficiencies in that fashion. Since this was introduced to council, we have had Manny work with NDOT legal team to get all the concessions that they would be willing to make at least. And I think, I won't speak for Manny, but I think he's comfortable with where the document stands today. Certainly the critical items he was able to get hashed out. So with that, I'll stop. And Manny, if you want to add anything, you can.
No, yeah, that's exactly right. We had the opportunity to meet with their legal team, went through almost line by line the concerns I raised previously, and didn't get everything, but we got a heck of a lot. And I think it's well, I know it's their final, their bottom line document. I think it's a decent to good document for us as well from a legal standpoint, given that we're dealing with essentially what we started with is a stock agreement they just put together for the state to get everything they could, which I don't blame them, of course, for doing. So with the concessions that we got, I think it's a good document, and I would recommend moving forward from a legal standpoint.
Thank you. Councilor, questions?
I have a comment, 'cause someone had raised this to me in terms of, well, why not wait? Why, just wait so NDOT could do it? But, I mean, for us as a city, Jonathan, kudos to you and everyone involved, but we really didn't have a place for open industrial, and obviously now we have a couple cement companies, places like Custom Concrete, they need a place to go. We value those businesses, but putting them all out in this one area made this intersection very dangerous, and we can't wait because it's a safety issue and concern. So I thought this was a great solution, Jonathan, so thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And to be clear, I mean, the benefit here is that we get this improvement made more quickly without any cost to the city. NDOT is reimbursing us for the work we're doing to make the improvements. So I think it's a win-win for both entities.
Yeah, what NDOT communicated was that if this doesn't pass, they're in the, bless you, they're in the pipe, this will be in the pipeline from 5 years from now, I believe, John?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's timely.
It might cost us a little bit more in 5 years.
I would imagine it would, yeah.
Any
So,
other comments?
John, basically, they're giving us $1.5 million and saying, here, you fix it. And
In so many words, to provide acquisition services and construction on 32, under that same contract that we would already be out there widening Mule Barn Road.
this is the first time I ever saw where they give us the intersection, we fix it, we give it back.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
unique.
Yeah.
To me, anyhow.
I think there, again, it's dotting i's, crossing t's to make sure that if something were to go wrong with our contractor for some reason, it's clear that we are owning that intersection during construction and then we transfer it back to them. So it's a liability question, but yeah, that's how the agreement works.
No, I think NDOT, it's a compliment to John and his staff that they have the confidence to do that. And it also has to do with the progress of the State Road 32 project downtown, that they have a trust in us, which is, as you know, the downtown project is the largest co-venture they've ever had with a city. So because we have John and his people, they have some faith in what we could do with their property.
Well, counselors, any other questions? Do I have a motion then to approve Resolution 23-103?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made by Counselor Edwards, seconded by Counselor Gilbert. Kim, would you call the roll?
Joe Edwards,
Yes.
Scott Willis,
Yes.
Jake Gilbert,
Yes.
Mike Johns,
Yes.
Scott Fry,
Yes.
Troy Patton.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on then to new business. Resolution 23-103, approving certain real property improvement within the city of Westfield for tax abatement. This is the Stellhorn North Point LLC shell buildings. It is up for a council introduction this evening and adoption consideration a couple weeks from now. Kai Chuck, Director of Economic Development, is going to explain to us what this is about.
Evening, councilors. For the record, Kai Chuck, Economic Development Department, here to introduce tax abatement consideration for 3 buildings to be located in North Point Commerce Park. The abatement under consideration is 10 years for real property for all 3 buildings at the schedule here listed under section 6 here in the resolution. Year 1, 100%, and by year 10 at 10% with 10% increments to the final year. The location of the buildings in consideration are at North Point Commerce Business Park on the northeastern side of North Point. The ERA was established for this business park in 2019. Location for building number 1 is lot number 1. The building would be an estimated 16,000 square feet on 2 acres. Estimated investment would be $2.9 million, and the company here has committed to 6 new jobs at $28 per hour. The estimated abatement value at the end of 10 years on this property would be $290,000. Building number 2 would be on lot number 2, which is directly west of lot number 1. And that would be an estimated 32,000 square foot building on 2.3 acres. Estimated value of this investment is about $6 million. The company has committed to 4 new jobs at $27 per hour, retaining 8 jobs at $44 per hour. Estimated value at the end of the 10-year tax abatement on this location would be $605,000. Building number 3 is on lot number 4, and this would be estimated 54,000 square feet, building on estimated 5 acres. Estimated total value here is $7.8 million, and the company has committed to 12 new jobs at $28 per hour. The estimated value at the end of the term on this tax abatement would be $789,000. The company representatives are here virtually and in person. J.R. Freiberger is attending virtually, and Andy Freiberger is here to do a presentation. Both he, J.R., and myself would be available to answer questions after the presentation.
Thanks, Kai. Good evening. My name is Andy Freiberger, and I, along with J.R. Freiberger, own Stellhorn North Point LLC, which owns the 30 acres section in North Point that we're discussing this evening. In addition to this 30 acres, we also own JRF Construction that's located here in Westfield, as well as 5 commercial buildings along State Road 32 in Westfield as well. We're very committed to Westfield and its future. I'm here this evening to ask for your support and votes in favor of the tax abatement for Lot 1, Lot 2, and Lot 4 that Kai has submitted to you. Since 2020, we have worked on this section, getting roadwork, utilities, and storm systems developed. We have been marketing this property since we purchased and have recently sold lot number 3 to Insects Unlimited, which I believe you have recently approved for tax abatement. We are working to get approvals for building number 2 now and plan to move our corporate office into this building due to our continued growth. We have a high average wage scale for our corporate office personnel, which is significantly higher than most assemblies or smart manufacturing employers. We are also currently working with a local ag tech company to keep them in Westfield, as they are outgrowing their current space and would like to be in this location. We are working with them on building number 1 and hope to secure their lease very soon. Again, their technology-based pay scale and employment numbers would be much higher than the average target user for the balance of North Point. We are proposing building 4 as a speculative shell building. We've had 3 deals fall through at this location, and brokers are telling us it is in large part due to the lack of our ability to commit to tax abatement. And most active potential users have a surprisingly short time frame to make their decisions on locations. Our goal is to request and obtain approval for tax abatement on this building based on average number of employees and pay scales that were submitted to you by Kai. It will be our obligation to ensure that any of these tenants we rent to or potential buyers of this building will meet those requirements. It will be understood by those future occupants that if they do not meet these thresholds, they will not be able to maintain the tax abatements. But if approved, it will allow us to market and attract adequate and promising occupants that will meet the obligations we have presented. If we cannot attract the appropriate occupants, we understand the abatements may not hold, and the building ownership will be responsible for the taxes. This works to secure the city's interest in obtaining the most appropriate users as the conditions of approving abatements. I believe there have been similar requests for nearby buildings that have been approved on speculative basis. I understand each building is case by case with the council, but it does set a precedence for future requests, including ours tonight. We feel we can meet similar requirements and commitments for our speculative buildings that other developers have already received approvals for. Between land purchase and building constructions of buildings 1, 2, and 4, as we have already, as well as the already approved abatement for Building 3, we will be influenced nearly $20 million in investment into Westfield. This does not include the southern 13 acres of our property, which we are currently under contract to sell to a 160,000 square foot user, which would equate to another approximately $20 million in investment. We are clearly motivated to make sure it works for everyone long-term. Thank you for your consideration this evening, and we ask for your votes to be favorable for these abatements. Thank you.
Counselor, questions? No, this item is up for, will be up for consideration at our next meeting.
Okay.
So one quick question though. So you said that you were going to put your company into building 2.
Yes.
Sorry.
We'll take a portion of it.
A portion. Do you have another occupant for the other portion of it?
Not yet.
Okay.
I have one question if I could. This is for Kai. Kai, how does this differ from what we've already done at North Point with Holiday Properties and their speculative properties? Is there a difference from what we've already approved, or is this very similar?
This is very similar to what we did for Holiday. They had job commitments also attached to their shell building abatements, and they understand they're required to do that to achieve the abatement.
Perfect, okay.
Thank you. Look forward to seeing you back in a couple weeks. Our last item then this evening is ordinance 23-01, appropriating infrastructure improvement funds for spend in 2023. This item has a council introduction this evening, and we'll have a public hearing and adoption consideration at our February 27th meeting. And Jeremy, you want to take care of this?
Yeah, certainly. So as you all may recall, at the last meeting, you granted me the authority to pursue the purchase of the 2510 East 171st Street, East 171st Street parcel. We were successful in that, and we were successful in acquiring it for a bit less than the appraised value. As we've all been communicating, it seems like this infrastructure improvement fund would be the best way to pay for that. This money is specifically the money that the RDC shipped back to the council for that loan repayment. So $3 million of that, there was apparently $543,000 of utility sale dollars, utility proceed dollars that were still in that fund, which I was not aware of, but good, we haven't. Councilor Johns requested that if we were going to appropriate those dollars out of 651, the Infrastructure Improvement Fund, well, let's go ahead and appropriate all the money that's available today, which is $3,543,617. And those dollars are specifically for $710 for the land purchase, plus some small closing costs, and then the remaining balance of 2.833 would be set aside for the state road reconstruction and widening projects, specifically the streetscape. And we would be back in October once bids come back in to, if it's necessary to appropriate additional dollars into this fund to cover that cost. So I think that is it in a nutshell. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Council questions? Comments? Okay, good. Thank you, Jeremy. Hearing none, we'll see you in a couple weeks.
All right.
All right, that pretty much concludes that portion of our meeting this evening. Next item, do we have any guests who wish to address the council tonight? No cards, okay. Clerk treasurer comments?
We have none.
None this evening, okay.
Oh, sorry.
Marla Ayler, yes.
Hi, sorry. I would like to, for a moment, just to discuss that first slide with you, and I apologize. When I sent them very, very late in the day, I didn't catch the error. I had not bolded or grayed the appropriate lines there, but did just want to touch back on it for you based on additional comments that were made. One of the struggles that we are having in the Clerk Treasurer's Office to pay the RDC bills from November was, despite the fact that they were approved, at the time, there weren't legal lines, so we didn't have a place to attribute these dollars to, but there was also a discrepancy on the claim. So we couldn't certify them because the total wasn't right. So those claims were actually reapproved. They came in November, they were approved in December, reapproved in January, and so we have had some ongoing discourse, if you will, trying to figure out the best way to do that. And so the slide was also meant to point out that in the administrative legal budget, in January, we had, I believe it was January, could have been a little later, we had paid $12,000 of legal fees from the RFPs out of admin. So we are willing to, but we would like your advice to have a clear understanding of what you guys want done. Do you want those legal fees taken out of admin because that's where they were previously taken out of? Or do you prefer that they be taken out of a legal line in the RDC budget? But again, those legal lines don't exist just yet because the budget that was approved in October doesn't have them. So I just kind of wanted to be able to make that a little bit clearer. And if you have any questions, I will do my very best to try and answer them.
Joe said the vote on that budget, which includes the legal lines, will be in the next RDC meeting earlier, right? So in terms of the timeline.
Right, and that part's understood, but we couldn't have paid claims, or we wouldn't have paid claims out of lines that didn't exist. And the other struggle in the fall was that budget lines that did exist in services were already over budget. So if you would like to provide some guidance, we understand that the RDC has approved the claims and will approve the budget, but I wanted to explain to you why they haven't been paid yet.
The claim that you paid from administration of their budget, all right, is that part of a claim now that's going to be paid, we're asking to pay out of the RDC?
No, the previous claim came much, much earlier in the year, long before the RDC's budget approval in the fall. So those were attributed to admin. I think we started generating maybe RFP claims in January, so maybe it was a March or April claim.
So, more specifically, one of the appraisers required a $12,000 deposit on the appraisals that were being done. That occurred in April of 2022. So in April of 2022, long before the discussion of RDC paying RDC claims, there was a $12,000 payment for the appraisals made to Taft. And then we did not get the remaining balance of that pass-through cost until October, I believe it was. So that's, does that help explain? And then are you asking, do you want the $39,000 that's outstanding applied back to admin or applied to the RDC?
Yes.
Okay.
I won't speak for Manny, but at this point, can you wait? I mean, we are 90 days past due. Can you wait until RDC meets again to get budget approval for the appropriation lines so that you can?
Yeah, no, that's not a problem. And also, remember, we submitted everything by the 19th, so there's like a week of time, and I didn't bill any of mine, like I said I wouldn't, but for CAM, it'd be a couple $1,000s. Do you want me to just loop that into the January bill?
Yeah, yes.
And provide that to you for the next meeting, or do you want me to wait and provide it until this comes out? I just want to be clear. What will be helpful, Ms. Ayler?
Right, so we're waiting for clarification on the email that the three of us, Jeremy and Manny and I, exchanged emails a week ago today with kind of an explanation of what the claims were that were still outstanding and attributable to different legal lines that were going to come out of East Side TIF and legal lines that were going to come out of Grand Junction TIF, as well as some invoices from a rather voluminous spreadsheet that Jeremy took the time to separate by color. So Debbie in our office, who does invoicing, has separated those, but we don't have a claim. We just outright never received it from April, so that hasn't been paid. And then there were some other fees that I think they've been assigned an invoice, but technically not invoiced to us yet for maybe November and December. So we're still waiting on that. So the three of us had suggested a meeting, which I don't know if that's going to happen or if we're just going to wait until the next RDC meeting with the budget approved. But we're kind of in a holding pattern, and I just wanted to provide kind of an explanation that we're working toward it.
Yeah, so I saw that email. My paralegal sent a really detailed note from our accounting team that showed to the cent all of those claims and showed the bill and the invoice number that was sent to the city. So those, in my mind, that was resolved. So that's why I didn't push for a meeting. I'd be happy to talk, but she provided all that information.
The spreadsheet.
So, I don't know if it was a spreadsheet or a PDF or. Yeah, so there was a spreadsheet that where Cam.
Yes, and
Yeah, so I sent that with the PDF that she sent that, like I said, to the cent, matched up all the claims and referenced invoice numbers that were sent to the city and all that. And that was separate from what Cam painstakingly did, which was attribute each of the entries to the allocation areas that they benefited.
Right, so we received an email that showed the contracted services through Taft for the RFPs. One was one amount of money that they had paid, and the other was kind of a window. And there was a check attached for roughly half of the lower end, but it never specifically stipulated exactly what the price was. If you're saying there is additional
Yeah,
detail.
That PDF summary has all of the claims on it. So the contract you're referencing was a range, was 22 to 25,000.
Right.
And then the actual payments, as Jeremy mentioned, with the canceled checks from our firm, was attached to that second PDF.
Yes, and the check was for 12,000, which means there's either,
There were two checks.
that was not in the PDF that I received. There was only one check in the PDF that we received, as well as it did not have that additional detail, which is where I said if we could get together with additional detail, that would be great. So,
Well, that's what that, I know, I'm happy to, but I'm saying
Yeah.
that additional details in that PDF that reconciled everything to the set. But I'm happy to chat whenever you need to.
That'd be
So for
great.
my purposes, I need to know, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to get you the bills for January and the last little bit of December before the next RDC meeting, or do you want me to wait until, I guess it would be the March RDC meeting? What would be most helpful for you?
well, we need the claims as soon as the invoices are available. So if you have them, we'll take them tomorrow and get them on the claims for the next meeting, because that's a week from tomorrow. So we still have time to do that.
Yep, they'll be prepped by the end of the week.
Great, that would be super. But as for the rest of it, I think you now understand, perhaps, I hope, that we were waiting not only for guidance necessarily from RDC, but also from you guys, because we did pay part of those RFP claims out of admin. And so it's maybe a discussion for you guys to have, but we are anxiously waiting that advice. And also, we think that through different discussions that we've had, that we really need to examine the fiscal policy. We're not suggesting that anything is not legal, but for the purposes of accounting and tracking, some of it is not really going the way that the clerk treasurer is comfortable with. And beyond that, I would defer to legal counsel, our legal counsel, when it comes to that. But do you have any questions about what I've said that I could answer for you?
Are you wanting an answer tonight on the $19,000? So you're up here asking for
Oh,
guidance?
well, it'd be 39,000. I guess it would be up to you guys.
To me, the simplest thing seems to be, I mean, it seems clear that it's going to be, the budget's going to be approved at the next RDC. Hang tight and process the payment after that. That's my opinion on that.
Sounds
I
good.
think Manny's already mentioned that
It's okay
the
with
time
me.
frame's good with him.
That's okay with me.
Super.
I agree.
Okay, thank you for that. Will, do you have anything you'd like to add? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Marla.
Mr. Johns, let me say this. We spend a lot of time with these bills and the claims, and I hear, oh, he sent me an email, she sent me an email. You know, it's not having the clerk treasurer's office in our building, it makes the communication very difficult. I'm going to direct our legal counsel, Jeremy Lawler. I will request of the clerk's office that they sit down for face-to-face meeting once a month and get these things straightened out. So I'm going to follow through with that.
Thank you, Mayor Cook. I think that would be most productive. Yeah, it's been kind of an ongoing issue for a year now, so we can get it resolved. It would be wonderful. City Council comments.
This is Troy Patton. I just have a couple of really quick comments, and I'll be real brief. Number one, just kind of thinking back, I was trying to take some notes while Joe was speaking. Joe talked about a 5-year plan that they're executing on or something like that. If we could make that 5-year plan public to City Council and post it, that would be great. I'm not sure if that plan is in writing, or maybe Taft has that, or I don't know who has it, but if that could be shared with everybody, because there seems to be a little bit of confusion as to what that 5-year plan is. And then number two, April, we will have our finance committee meeting, looking at the first quarter. Jeremy, I would ask, and I'm going to keep asking every meeting, that we would actually, at some point during this tenure of this city council, get a roll of the property taxes of commercial properties and the abatements and when they're coming off and what that looks like. And I know it's been worked on for the last 2 years, but 2023 would be nice to have that. That's all.
Thank you.
So Troy,
Councilor Bennett?
yeah, just for clarification, are you referring to the information that Caleb has been working on? Because what I heard you say there was abatements and when they're rolling off. Is that?
Yeah, part of what we asked for a long time ago, we said, what does the commercial property tax base look like? What are we collecting? What abatements we have? When are and what schedule of when they are rolling off? That's nothing new.
Okay, very good. As long as Caleb knows and has worked on it. I do know that presentation's nearly ready.
Okay, just a quick report then on the APC meeting from last week, Monday the 6th. Basically, we had 2 items of business that were approved. We approved the Woods Robinson Briggs PUD Amendment 2, which we approved earlier this evening. And we also approved the APC Grand Park Village PUD Amendment 5. That was held up from presentation tonight. There's an issue. The developer is clarifying some language in their contract with the owners, so we expect that will be here for our next presentation. We also had 2 public hearings, one on the Wheeler Landing PUD amendment on 186th Street, and the other on the Westfield Washington Schools PUD. And we expect that both of those will be coming back to the APC at a future date. Quick question on my part, and based upon a conversation we had at the APC last week, I'd like to get some clarification from the council and just take a straw poll, if you would. I know the APC is looking for clarification. We had a situation where a developer came to us and talked about putting in a new development and asked that we take a look at our UDOs and grant him, I think we had a 50 or 75% brick or stone requirement for the facade. And this developer came in and said, hey, I'd like to have a 25% brick and stone because a lot of other folks have done it in the past and you guys have approved some PUDs. So my thought is that and this is what I'm looking for clarification from the council. As I'm representing you on the APC, I would be inclined to answer that the council feels, as we look at growth, the growth of Westfield, the fact that we've had and continue to enjoy a fantastic growth rate here, that if anything, we should be strengthening our UDOs, making them a little bit stricter, improving the quality of the buildings that we approve. And I would be inclined to give that direction to any developer that came to us and asked us to lower our standards. So I guess what I'm looking for is just a straw poll from this council, something that I can take back to the APC. Your thoughts?
Turn my mic off, I thought we were done. Kind of a generic question. I guess I don't know if I can answer that generically without understanding what exactly we would be saying that to. I think in general what you're saying makes a lot of sense, but I don't know if I would give it just a wide statement of yes, without knowing exactly what that was.
If I could, I don't want anybody to get super specific so that anybody can say there was a predetermination. So I think the way Councilor Johns phrased it is right on. Just get kind of a general impression.
I agree completely with your summary of the question that you posed.
Councilor Edwards, you agree? Okay. Councilor Gilbert agrees? Okay. That's what I was looking for. That gives me enough to take it back to the APC, and when those things come forward, I can make a statement knowing that in general the council feels similar to. Okay. Thank you. Any other comments, councilors?
Mike, Cindy Spiljerik wanted me to mention there'll be a ARPA meeting on March 24th, 2 o'clock here.
Thank you. Thank you. Mayor Cook? No comments? Well, then let's adjourn our meeting at about 9 o'clock. Thank you all for coming.
Okay, I've got something new.